And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 92 of the Technology for Good show. I keep saying that with surprise every week as it increments another one. Going, my God, we're up at number 92 at this point. It's incredible.
I know.
It's mad, isn't it?
It is. I wonder what we're going to have to do for our 100.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe we should get answers on a postcard.
Suggestions, please.
None of which are allowed to involve here clothes than we're currently wearing. No more, no skin, no nothing, please, for everybody else's sake.
Yeah.
I know 92. It's awesome. And 1st of April. April Fool.
1st of April. So the first story we have today actually is all about that, because it's all about the fact that the whole global warming thing has been proven to be a hoax. The climate change isn't real. It's mad. It's no, I'm kidding.
You did send me one last night, and it wasn't from April the 1st, but it was the head of the former head of the Weather Channel.
I know, yeah, really? I know, yeah. But it's an old one, and the arguments he's using have been thoroughly debunked. And there's a big difference between weather and climate as well, and not everyone gets that. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Anywho, we'll crack on because we've got a good bunch of stories to get through, some great ones. So we'll just head straight into them, I reckon. There's a couple of climate-related stories. By the way, I'm using Firefox today.
I saw that actually. I saw the change,
and I just wanted to change it around a little, mix it up. I'm living on the edge.
Nothing to do with the backfired Google mic drop April Fool.
No. Thankfully, nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But if you notice that I've found a tab manager, and I'll dig the name out in a while. I found a tab manager that has the tabs going vertically down on the left.
Yes. And
I really like it. I think it's a far better way of doing it than having them along the top. You know, with the big screens, you have far more horizontal space than vertical space.
True.
And you can fit more info on the tabs when you have the tab manager like that. So I like it a lot. I must find out what it's called again, because it's a long time ago since I downloaded it. I just thought I'd mention this thing as it's actually visible on the screen there. Anywho, I should shut up about that and get on to the actual stories.
Let's go.
And people can actually see the tabs now, so you'll see the order and where we are within that order. So there's a couple of climate-related ones there, and they're typically not good. The first one, Great Barrier Reef coral bleaching at 95% in the northern section, an aerial survey reveals. So basically, coral bleaching due to the warming of the waters means that the Great Barrier Reef is under severe threat. And some of that is down to El Nino. The El Nino surfaces the warm water and exacerbates the issue. But still, it means that the Great Barrier Reef is in trouble. The other story on climate that I thought was worth surfacing again. The other story that I thought was interesting, and we normally only do one, but I actually had 3 stories, and I had to cut one of them, and I couldn't cut 2 of them, so I just sort of cut one of them. But this one is the Arctic set another record for low maximum extent. And basically, we're just coming out of winter, and every winter in the northern hemisphere, the Arctic ice grows. But every year for the last, X number of years, the amount it grows has been falling.
Yeah.
And again, this year, the maximum ice extent, the amount it grew, was the lowest ever. And, this is from the NSIDC, branch of the U.S. government, the National Snow and Ice Data Center, and there's a lot of detail there. I'm not going to go into it because
No, but again, the biggest. This is the thing. It
speaks to a trend.
It speaks to a trend, yes. I have 2 things that I think are missing from the story. One is the graph of actually showing the decrease, and the other one is actually putting it in context against the landmass that a known landmass. We've remarked a number of times where we've seen the Antarctica, or the United States, the United States of America fitting inside
Antarctica comfortably.
Because when you hear a 14.52 million square kilometers, that really doesn't sound like an awful lot. So it doesn't.
Sounds like a lot to me. Ireland is 50,000 square kilometers.
I know, but it's just the fact it's not, it doesn't give you any context.
Yes. Yeah.
So it doesn't place it within a context.
True.
So from my point of view, yes, there are high resolution images in there that actually show, not the standard Mercator projection, but a top-down projection, which again is very interesting to look at because it's a point of view you never really look at or see. But I'd love to see it in context to say, this is what it was, this is how big it was in relation to a known landmass in 2001, and this is what it is in 2016, and this is the change in 15 years, and we're all screwed.
Yeah. I think the last part we might want to leave out because we don't want to say we're all screwed. We might want to say exactly. We might want to say this is serious crap, and we need to get off our asses and do something about it because look. I think that's probably a better message than we're all screwed because the we're all screwed message is we're all screwed. Let's go and burn all the rest of the fossil fuels.
True. No, you're right. The fatalistic message. Actually, the great thing about it is, and I saw it on BBC last night, the United States and China have signed the Paris Agreement.
That's right. Yeah.
It's phenomenal because they are the two largest industrial emissions producers on the planet, and that goes a long way. Now, is it 55% of emitters or 55% of countries, or I can't remember what the ratification number was. There was
I think it was one or the other. I think it was X number of countries or Y percentage of emissions have to have signed up by April.
Exactly. So I have the two biggest emitters saying, yeah, we want to do it.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. You'll just see, in theory, we will now just see everybody falling in the line behind them.
Yeah. Your audio is starting to go a bit crackly there, Chris. Just so yeah. I'll move on to the next story that we're covering. So because that's all the bad news stuff out of the way. So now we're heading into the good news stories. And I thought this one was interesting. This is from the Office of Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman. And it talks about how there's a group of, let me just expand a little bigger so people can see it. So it talks about how there's a group of attorneys general and names them there in the US who are coming together with Al Gore to form a coalition of, as it says in the article, top law enforcement officials committed to aggressively protecting and building on the progress the United States has made in combating climate change. So quite good. And they've decided to investigate the ExxonMobil for alleged misconduct in hiding the fact that climate change is happening. And they're also working on making sure that Obama's Clean Power Act gets passed as well, a Clean Power Plan, and protecting it against legal challenge. So it's an interesting one. It comes a bit out of left field. I mean, we've seen a lot of work happening in the tech sphere. We've seen a lot of people in politics, typically in the US, shooting it down. We've seen a lot in the power industry, the energy industry, but for the legal industry to start getting involved, that's a new one on me.
It's one of those ones that really speaks to the strength at times of the American system itself and the checks and balances. The fact that they can do things at a state legislature level is phenomenal. And the amount of power that gives, because out of the 50 states, each of those has a representative in Washington and within the legal sphere. And if those people in the legal sphere are actually making positive changes that the electorate actually want, that puts their elected representatives on the back foot and under pressure. So regardless of whether they're Democrat or Republican, if those people are seen to be making a positive impact on their state, then woe betide the governor or the senator or the congressman or woman who tries to repeal that or tries to knock it back.
True. Your audio is still very crackly, Chris.
Give me a second.
Sorry about that. The other interesting thing, just on what you're saying there, is that I noticed one of the, I'll just call it up here, one of the attorneys general who's mentioned in the article comes from Maine. And that's interesting because the governor of Maine is, he's, excuse my language, he's batshit crazy. He really is. I mean, the stuff he has come out and said, he's mad conservative Republican. And the kind of things he has said, would make Donald Trump look positively left-wing. Oh yeah, he's extremely anti-gay. He's extremely anti-anything, basically. And yet, I noticed here, there it is. Maine Attorney General Janet Mills is quoted in the article saying, "Our natural resources are the lifeblood of our state's economy and our quality of life." Tell that to your governor. "Global climate change demands immediate action, and I am committed to using the authority of my office to address the problem in a meaningful way by defending important EPA regulations against attacks by the coal industry and exploring litigation options that will hold the worst polluters accountable for their actions." You go, girl.
Absolutely. How's my audio now? Better?
Significantly better, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it's this is one of those things that, or this is one of those instances where they're actually using. I agree with the use of all tools of the law to get to where they need to get to, as opposed to using all tools for the law to try and crack encryption and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you didn't happen to see my tweet about privacy? The difference between a lawyer and a technologist on privacy. A lawyer believes that a private conversation is anyone that you can have, but that they can listen into with a warrant. Whereas a person who's involved in technology believes a private conversation is one that you just can't overhear.
Good. Yep. That's a fair summation of it, in fairness.
Yeah, but some of those statements like that I love this. I really do. I think it's Lorna keeps giving off to me and saying that I'm hugely interested in American politics and law and things like that there, and a large part of that's because so much of it is so accessible and so many of the websites that we look at deal with that, so it helps to have that context. But you wouldn't have the Supreme Court in the UK or the law lords going after it in this way. So I think this is phenomenal. I want to keep an eye on this. This looks to be very, very interesting.
I agree.
So very interesting.
I agree. I do. No, it's fantastic. It's a brilliant initiative, and like I say, it's one that came completely out of left field.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Gore is a very persuasive man. He won a Nobel Peace Prize with a PowerPoint deck. That's persuasion. I don't know.
This, in fact, the slideware that I used to use before I used Keynote was called Persuasion. by a company now defunct, I suspect, called Aldous.
I suspect you could be right there. I couldn't possibly comment on that.
Back in the 90s. Anyway, we'll move on because the next story I thought was from the kind of energy space.
Yes.
And there's a couple of them there. We'll do the two of them. So the global coal and gas investment falls to less than half of that was invested in clean energy in the developed world in 2015. That's pretty amazing. So this comes out of where did this come from? Is it the Energy Agency? I forgot. God Almighty! I should read these things 2 or 3 times before I start the show. There's too many to remember them all.
There are so many news and things like that. There, it came out of University of Exeter.
Yeah. Just saw it. But it's fascinating. The investments globally in clean energy are just flying. They're going ahead in leaps and bounds. It's really impressive. And then you see things like this story coming out of Alberta, and we remember Alberta as being the place that has all the tar sands, but yet last year they elected a socialist, not socialist, I guess, but left-leaning government who had a lot of policies around environmental positive environmental change, and consequently, they've started to cut way back on their carbon emissions. They've got an environmental minister in Alberta now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good. And you can see here now that they have a solar boom, according to this article, coming with almost $1 billion worth of projects in development. They're on track for 2 gigawatts of solar by 2025, with 385 in the pipeline right now. So,
and this is this thing we keep coming back to. You know, your shorthand for a gigawatt is basically a nuclear power station, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to turn this around in what install. They have installed effectively.
2025. By 2025, they'll have ramped up 2 nuclear power plants worth of solar.
No. It says, and for the first time, the rooftop solar industry installed more than 2 gigawatts of projects in a single year. They effectively turned on 2 nuclear power plants in 1 year.
Yeah.
Whereas we're looking at in the UK at EDF and turning on a nuclear power plant in about 17 years that'll go over budget by at least 3 times. And actually, they lost their CFO because of accounting practices and things like that. There, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think the CFO resigned actually because of the Hinkley plant. He was against
yes, you're
it.
right.
And the whole board so the whole board of EDF. They're debating whether or not to go ahead with that power plant is it in Somerset?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
In fairness, that nuclear power plant is going to be rated at, if memory serves, 3 gigawatts, 3.2 if I remember correctly. So it's a large nuclear power plant. But the deadline for when it's supposed to be turned on was 2023. So that's 8 years from now.
It'll never be finished in time.
7 years from now. And the thing is, they've said now, EDF themselves have said there's no way they're going to hit that deadline. And it's going, as you say, way over budget as well. So
exactly.
We're looking at it maybe being turned on in 2025, so 9 years from now to get 3 gigawatts out.
Yeah.
Whereas solar, I mean, India are talking about putting out 100 gigawatts in the next, by 2022. Is when they want to have 100 gigawatts, and China's doing 70 in the next 2-3 years. So nuclear definitely. I'm not anti-nuclear per se. I'm not very pro-nuclear, but I'm not anti-nuclear. I think it's a place for nuclear in the mix, but it's not a scalable or cost-effective solution. So
no, well, they abandoned their cost-effective solution in thorium whenever they needed weapons. Now, thorium actually, it can't go supercritical. The half-life of the product is so much less. It is a more viable solution, but they needed the uranium and plutonium for nuclear weapons, and thorium doesn't create fissile material. Yeah. So they abandoned thorium, and it just, but it is what it is. The interesting thing is, whenever I read this story, it reminded me of another one on the BBC where, whenever you're coming into Heathrow and you see a lot of those reservoirs.
Yep.
So they now have the second largest floating PV cell installation on one of those reservoirs.
I saw that.
It's brilliant.
It is
absolutely phenomenal. So it is. So although it must be one of the reservoirs they don't have water sports on, because they have a lot of water skiing and things like that on those reservoirs as well. But great to see.
It is. I mean, one of the advantages of rolling out floating solar panels on reservoirs is it cuts way down on evaporation.
Yeah. So
as well as getting power, you're also keeping your water, which is always good when you have a reservoir.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So we'll move on. The next, we saw a series of stories come up this week because there was a Microsoft conference this week called Microsoft Build.
Yes.
And as a result of that, there were a series of Microsoft-related stories, which we'll be talking about. The first one, though, is not about Microsoft, but it introduces us to the topic. And the first topic that really came out of the Microsoft Build conference was about bots.
Yes.
And there was a lot of bot-related stories as a consequence. So leading into that, we see this one about Facebook and Facebook's Messenger landing an airline as a chat app. I thought that was pretty amazing. So the airline in question is KLM, and the idea is that you'd be able to do everything from checking status to eventually booking tickets using Facebook Messenger. This is a thing that Chris Messina, I don't know if you know Chris. Chris was the guy who came up with the idea for hashtags. He's now working for Uber.
Yes.
But he wrote a very good piece on Medium there a few weeks back about the era of conversational commerce.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read it, you should have a look. It's really good. And that's what this is about. It's about the fact that the likes of WeChat in China and similar messaging apps are now starting to rapidly become places where people are doing business. So you will be able to, Facebook are starting it with this KLM bot, but they'll rapidly start rolling out other bots as well, and we'll start doing a lot of our commerce through Facebook Messenger is the idea.
You reminded me of something there. Do you remember with the Iowa volcano, and there were airlines started actually to set up social media teams.
Say the name of the volcano again.
Iowa. Give over.
Well done.
So the
how long did it take you to learn that?
Do you know, actually, it was Hugh Edwards at the BBC. Actually, was at the time. The BBC had this little clip of how to actually say it correctly, and I've never forgotten it. But the point is that a lot of the airlines actually set up very rapidly Twitter teams to deal with social media and people's complaints and things like that there. And if I remember, you told me before, KLM was actually the first one, and they kept it going even after. So KLM have a history of being on, a leading edge, if not the bleeding edge of this type of technology, and it doesn't surprise me that it's KLM at all.
It's true. It's true. They had a really good social media team. I think they had during that incident with the volcano in Iceland. I think they had a 24-hour team, and I think they had I think they had 70 people in it, and they cut it back after the incident, but they kept it going.
Yeah.
And they said it was, I've forgotten the numbers now, but they said it was something like 25% or more effective than their call center. So it really worked very well for them. And now, as you see, they're on the leading edge of this conversational commerce thing as well, which is interesting. And they're one of the first, but there'll be far more of these. I think because I just if you plot this forward from where we are today with these bots in messengers, that's useful because the messaging apps are platforms with a billion people or so, somewhere between 500 million and a billion people, depending on which chat app you're talking about. So that's where you can, because you have the population there, that's where you can roll out the functionality. But I think eventually it'll roll back to things like Siri. Siri is crap.
Yeah.
The Android equivalent is Google Now, I think.
It is,
and Cortana on Microsoft. I think that's where it will go back to, because people really want, I suspect, long term to be interacting using a more natural medium like conversation, like actually speaking rather than typing. The idea of the Amazon Echo.
The Holy Grail is Jarvis.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. That is what it is.
The Amazon Echo or similar, where
Alexa.
Yeah, exactly. Where you say, "Hey Alexa," or whatever it is, do this, do that, turn on the lights, turn off the lights,
Yeah.
The apparently I haven't tried it, but apparently the Siri built into the Apple TV is quite good for that kind of stuff. Not to the same level as the Amazon one, but just for controlling the stuff on the TV. Apparently, you can say things like, what did she say? And it goes back 10 seconds in the movie and plays it again with subtitles and things like that.
No, that's pretty cool, actually. It is. I like that. I like that a lot. The one problem that I have is, you really do look like an idiot when you talk to your phone in the way that, Siri or Google Now or something like that. You do just feel like a numpty. If I'm doing anything with Google Now, I usually have my headphones in, so I don't feel like such an idiot when I'm. I
totally see where you're coming from, and you're right. But I think that's going to change because that's a perception thing. And in fact, I see far more people these days going around with the phone like this, speaking to it like that. And it struck me for that. I was going, in the early days of mobile phones, you'd see people doing that with a mobile phone, speaking like that, and then putting it up to their ear and then speaking like that. And,
you've reminded me of so many grandparents at that point.
Exactly. But now I'm seeing loads of young people doing it. And I'm kind of going, oh, that's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And what it is they're Snapchatting or they're leaving voice texts, audio texts, or
that is the most fun on WhatsApp. I totally
there you go.
A friend of mine, we got into an argument about geeky stuff, and I know what it was. It was the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, and I ended up voice bombing his entire WhatsApp time, or our WhatsApp conversation, by leaving a message. It's like, have you watched it yet? Have you watched it yet? Have you? I sent about 20, so it did, and he just replied and he said, "I hate you." And the best thing about it is you can do it in the car because you're just talking. You just hold the button. You're not typing. I'm a bad person when I want to be.
I know. It's desperate. I'm shocked. So I am shocked, horrified. So that's becoming more mainstream. It's becoming a lot more common. So in that scenario, this is
doesn't make me like it anymore. Doesn't make me feel any less of an idiot. But okay.
I can sympathize. I can. We'll move on because there's a few more stories in this space, and we see that if I can find where it is on my screen here. Come back. Where's it gone? It's down here. Oh, matey. Too many windows open apparently. So as part of this Build conference, Microsoft have launched their own bot framework to let developers build their own chatbots. This is pretty impressive, I gotta say.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be developing your own bots, but to have a platform out there and apparently it's quite straightforward to do it.
Yeah.
To allow developers using your system, your Visual Studio system, which is the Microsoft IDE development environment. So to allow your developers to use your system to create bots easily, that's huge. That'll make a huge difference. And I'll just roll on through two or three more Microsoft stories while we're on the topic. Skype is getting in on it as well, and we're getting Cortana and bot messaging and Skype. And Microsoft, and this is pretty cool, Microsoft are launching their cognitive services. And if you go to this story and watch this video, it's really interesting.
This is the Seeing AI. It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. It is. So this developer is blind.
Yeah.
And he's using the cognitive services APIs to develop glasses, and you can see the glasses he's wearing there. They have a little swipe thing right in the corner, and as you swipe that, it looks around and tells you what's in your environment. So, I mean, this isn't mainstream yet, but it's not far off it, and it's using the cognitive services to deliver that. And he's writing against those APIs. So, those are the kinds of things that are coming down the line and are being made available to other developers as well to use. So, the whole new world cliche comes to mind, and you know we're heading into that. We're heading into a world of cognitive APIs, and it's I mean the things that are going to be coming out of it are phenomenal.
Yeah, well, I read a really interesting story today, which analyzed build and what came out of it, and you know there's a very, when you looked at the time that Microsoft spent, for example, talking about Windows Phone, it was the same amount of time as the iOS and Android. Effectively, they regard it pretty much as a dead platform. What they want to do actually is they're looking forward into the next wave, and it is around these bots and things like that. And you really struggle to find anybody better at sort of this type of stuff than Microsoft Research. They've been doing this stuff for a long time. It's just that they hadn't the company behind them in this way. So things like creating bots.
Did you hear the story behind this?
No.
So this is the first new departure really for Satya Nadella.
Yeah.
What he's been doing up until now is expanding on everything they've done before.
Yeah.
But this is a whole new departure, the whole bot platform and the whole move in that direction. That's him. This is all him.
Yeah.
And it happened because he was on a plane flying back from, I think, the UK to the US, and he happened to sit beside one of the Microsoft researcher guys, and I have a chat with him. And the guy fired up a bot that he had developed and showed it to Satya Nadella, and it was, revelatory. The light bulb started going off in Satya Nadella's head, and he said, "Wow, we gotta do all of this." So he's, as a result of that conversation and that, sitting on a plane where you're stuck beside someone who can be, a pain in the ass, or it could be, in this case, interesting.
Yes.
Suddenly changed Microsoft completely, and very serendipitously.
Yeah, well, we're both Slack users. We have used Slack a lot, and one of the things that I do like about Slack is this ability to build bots, and that we use it. We use Slack in Bluefin, and we have things like SAP message searches built into it. Or I'm working on doing some stuff with system administration functions within Slack and using bots to power those. And if it works, I may take it to Tech Ed and talk about it, which would be great. But yeah, no, the whole idea of bots and interaction and things like that there is phenomenal. But the holy grail is Jarvis and that type of intelligence.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is the ant model, which is lots of little bots that do very tightly defined things, but the sum of all of them equal a large change in your life.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, as I say, hugely transformative, and I think the long-term thing will be, where you go from Star Trek, computer tea, Earl Grey black is the kind of thing that comes to mind,
Yes.
That kind of thing. I think that's where we're headed. That's weird. My screen, one of my other screens here, is just changed by itself. It's like, whoa, that was weird. Anyway,
it's all right. Don't worry. Don't think about it. The gremlins will settle themselves in a minute.
So the next story is sticking with Microsoft for a second, but changing topics slightly, talking about blockchain.
Yes.
And Microsoft, I mean, we talked on the show a couple of times about Ethereum and the different ways it's being used. And it's being used in some really interesting things, because you can build smart contracts into the Ethereum blockchain. Self-executing smart contracts.
Your post today, or was it today on Facebook about supply chains? Or it wasn't today. I noticed it today. Your post on supply chains and how blockchain can actually.
That's the next story.
Ah, right. Sorry. sorry. I didn't see it in there. Yeah. Okay. You'll have to highlight those to me, Tom. Really. Sorry, go on.
But I just this is amazing, because they've built the Ethereum software into Visual Studio. So anyone who uses Visual Studio now will be able to use Ethereum's, and the language here is called Solidity, to execute and to build and execute transactions, any kind of transactions or contracts you want. This is what I said. Did you see that glow there? That text?
It did. Whoa!
There.
What are you?
Oh, that's weird.
doing?
That's weird. I'm not doing anything. That's doing it by itself. That's why I was freaked out a second ago. Okay, I'm gonna close.
Okay.
But
think. Go back. Because the great thing about having it in Visual Studio is you can actually build that blockchain functionality into applications. So you now are able to. You think about licenses. You think about registration and things like that. There. It becomes, you can actually use blockchain natively within the app, built in, and not have to go outside that. So what does that mean for things like open source software or for commercial software and things like that? Absolutely phenomenal.
It's mind-blowing stuff. I mean, what can come out of this, it's blown my mind just thinking about it. It's really amazing stuff.
Yeah. But go to your story, because I like this one. This one. You just had to use the Tesco thing. So that's just mean.
That's just mean.
Yeah, that is. That's just mean.
Why?
That is what burgers have taught us. But then again, it is a mea culpa. So it is.
Yeah. So
I just don't think they meant it.
They got their asses handed to them. I'd say they were very bloody sorry. And in fairness to Tesco, so we should put this in a bit of context. In 2013, I think it was, the Food and Safety Authority of Ireland, the FSAI, tested some burgers that were bought in Tesco's and found that they were not beef burgers as they said on the packet, but rather they were 29% horse meat in the beef burgers, in the alleged beef burgers. And of course, I mean, there's nothing wrong with horse meat per se. There was no danger to the public, but the thing is, it wasn't what it said on the tin, as it were. So the thing was, even more scarily, Tesco was caught off guard. They literally had no idea that this was the case. They assumed that when their suppliers said they were selling them beef burgers, they assumed that that's what the suppliers were selling them.
And it wasn't just Tesco's, and it wasn't just in Ireland. No. The original case in Ireland sparked off a
European-wide investigation.
European-wide investigation, and the UK and Ireland do share a large amount of trade in animals and meat and produce and things like that. So that investigation kicked off one in the United Kingdom, which uncovered a litany across many supermarkets that were exposed in the same way.
Yeah. So what this highlights is the fact that there is a huge amount of, or there's a huge lack, I should say, of transparency in the supply chain of food.
Yep.
And it's not just food, but this just happened to be one particularly good example that I came up with. And as a consequence of that, Tesco saw 360 million euros knocked off its value overnight, when it was discovered. And there are other, really good examples. There's the example of Ericsson's. And Ericsson's were buying chips for the phones they were manufacturing from a Philips company in New Mexico, and that plant was hit by lightning. And both Nokia and Ericsson's were buying from that plant at the same time. And the plant went out of production as a consequence of the lightning hit and the subsequent fire. Now, Nokia, in their supply chain, had multiple suppliers. Ericsson had just the one plant.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And consequently, Ericsson contacted them at the plant, and the plant said, no, it's fine. It was a small fire. We'll be back online in a couple of days to a week. And Ericsson's took them at their word. And as the plant started to do the cleanup, they found there had been significant smoke damage in the rest of the plant. And of course, a chip fab plant, is a full clean air facility, and the damage was such that it actually ended up being months before it came back into production again. Jesus. And Ericsson didn't have a backup, and consequently, it wasn't just the fiscal loss to Ericsson, but actually it ended up at Ericsson's deciding to get out of the handset market. So This is why this lightning strike on a chip plant in New Mexico meant that Ericsson's got out of manufacturing handsets.
Yeah,
it was a supply chain issue that destroyed their handset business. A company as big as Ericsson, just one lightning strike.
That is absolutely crazy. I hope. Is it the CEO or the CFO or the who decides on their? It must be, well, it's the purchasing and all the rest. It
is, but usually the
procurement teams.
Usually the supply chain function falls under the COO's purview, as far as I know.
Yeah, I would expect that. But speaking of supply chains and suppliers and good practices and things like that, the next story, I saw you tweeting this one or it going out in your feed, and I loved it. I thought this story was brilliant.
The Apple one?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a sec. Let me just finish.
Okay. I'm just super excited about it, Tom. I'm super excited.
Well, it's referenced in this one. So the next story is actually referenced in this here. I think.
Right, okay, yeah.
Did I link to it in this story? Maybe I didn't. I thought I did. I did probably further down. Anyway. So what this story is getting to is the importance of supply chain and the fact that supply chains are massively complex. And you've got the idea of conflict minerals, things like cassiterite, wolframite, coltan, and gold. Also, even petroleum can be a conflict resource. And
yes.
these are things that are bought out of conflict zones, and their purchase finances the conflict. Very often it's warlords who are doing the mining, and the money they get from the mining.
Look at Islamic State.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, they're massive in conflict oil.
Exactly. So that kind of thing. And here's the story you're talking about. Apple announced yesterday, actually 2 days ago now, that it is auditing 100% of its suppliers for the use of conflict minerals, which is really good. They're not the only ones to do that, in fairness. Intel have been doing that for a while as well, and there was another company I saw, but it's a very, very elite.
But it's the level of transparency. Like Apple are very transparent in their auditing and things like that there. And they take their responsibilities very seriously. I'm not saying that people like Intel don't, but we don't. I don't see that level of transparency from Intel. They may do the audits and things like that there and report it to the SEC as part of their corporate responsibility.
It was passed. It was the something Dodd law, Franken-Dodd law, or something it's called, which means all companies in the US have to audit and report on conflict minerals. They don't all do it very well.
Yeah.
But they're mandated to do it.
Awesome.
But what I was going on to in this story was how a combination of blockchain and the Internet of Things should make supply chains far, far easier to track. Because if you use the likes of the Ethereum stuff and you use smart contracts, suddenly you have a supply chain. If everything in the supply chain is on your blockchain, then everything is immutable, and it's you have the contract there, and it's enforceable and immutable.
Yeah. And
if you use IoT for tracking, you track all your stuff from start to finish. So
which and one industry that would benefit from that massively is pharma. There is a massive market. There's a massive world market in counterfeit
drugs,
pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So there is, and using blockchain on your supply chain in that way, and with IoT, and it's not as if they can't afford it. I say that flippantly, but it is the downside. The flip side to getting it wrong and things like that there to pharma costs a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
And retailers are one thing, but the iron grip and the regulatory environments that pharma are put under mean that their supply chain is already, it has to be cleaner than clean.
True.
So it does. So the level of pressure that pharma can exert upon its supply chain, I think, is larger than retail, and they could make it happen and make it work, and then other industries can learn from it.
Very true. Very true. It's a good point. And getting on to the story that got you all excited.
Yes.
Apple, and we said it already, Apple have now said that their supply chain is 100% audited for conflict minerals. And as I say, they're not the only one. It's a rarefied group. I think there was 3 companies. Yeah, the Dodd-Frank Act is what it's called, passed in 2010. Yes. And I think they say in this, was it this one they say that there's 3 companies? But anyway, it's a rarefied group of companies that do 100% of their reporting on conflict minerals. It's really impressive, I gotta say. And I suppose we shouldn't be that surprised, given that according to Gartner, Apple have had the best supply chain in the world for the last 5 years, I think it is.
Yeah.
So it was, according to Gartner, they were top supply chain 2015, 14, 13, 12, and 11. So, and even before that, it's the supply chain in Apple was, the current supply chain was set up by Tim Cook when he was brought in 98.
Yes. Yeah.
By Steve Jobs. And, that's what powered Apple to where they are today. And that's what got Tim Cook into the CEO role he's in today. He did such a good job with the supply chain and turning Apple's fortunes around.
Well, there's only, I think there's maybe only 2 or 3 companies in the world that you could put up there with Apple in terms of their supply chain. Dell used to be one. Amazon would be another one, and Walmart, just in terms of the efficiency of their supply chain, not necessarily the ethical nature of a supply chain, but certainly the pure ruthless efficiency of what their supply chain actually is.
Sure. Yeah. There's different ways to grade these things, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I don't think anybody has as ethical a supply chain or as an efficient one.
Yeah, true. Next story, again, an Apple story, and this was something that was brought up at the Apple event 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's this guy, Liam, the super secret 29-armed robot that tears down your iPhone. It's basically, this is, they showed a video of this at the iPhone event 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And then they brought a Mashable reporter on site and went through it with her, and you see the video here and her report of it. It's interesting because it seems to be one of a kind. I haven't seen this being done by anyone else. None of the other big hardware manufacturers have gone to the trouble of creating a device like this to take apart their equipment to make it more easy to recycle. Usually it just goes into a large grinder. Whereas this machine is a robot to actually take it apart and leave you with usable components at the end of it. It takes the screen off without breaking the screen if the screen isn't already broken. Yep. It takes the screws apart. It takes the battery out. It takes the motherboard out, and it separates them all nicely. And it does a good job of it so that you get a far more efficient take apart at the end of the day. So. Yep. I thought it was a fascinating story, and I don't know if anyone else will go down this route. Just Apple happen to have money they can throw at these kind of things, but I thought it was.
I think we talk about the components of phones and things like that there as being rare earth metals and things like that there, and they are called those things for a reasonably good reason. Some of them are rarer than others, but the prevalency of them, it seems to be centered in very specific areas. Lithium, for example, is very prevalent, in the salt flats in the Atacama Desert and things in Chile. They're not always in the best places in the entire world, but this it just makes sense. You know, we have robots that build cars. We have robots that build this stuff. Why don't we have a robot that takes stuff apart and actually does it in a good way?
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those ones that you sort of read and you go, oh yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That it does make perfect sense. And I can do at 350 units an hour. That's not an insignificant amount.
And this is a prototype.
Yeah.
So the full production model will probably be an order of magnitude greater than that. And it only handles one model of phone right now, but obviously again they'll make different versions for the different phone models.
Yeah.
Or they might have just one that can handle any phone model, depending.
Exactly. It is a really, really good idea, and as you say, you can recycle a lot of the parts. Yeah. If you think about the things in the iPhone that haven't necessarily been upgraded, the RAM chips, for example, could be reused. Yes, the processor families do get upgraded, but there are lots of other components in the phone itself that may not be upgraded between versions that you can then reuse. And it speaks to this ruthless efficiency within their supply chain, but not ruthless at any cost. But it is a very efficient supply chain.
It is, and this is part of the supply chain. It's the reverse supply chain, but it's still part of the supply chain.
Exactly.
We'll power on, and we saw yesterday. I don't know if you saw the video.
Yes. I have seen the video. I have seen the lines. We have both had many people that we know registering. Yes. They're putting their deposits down for one of these bad boys.
Yeah. It's a fine looking car, I have to say. It didn't quite meet the specs that some people were hoping it would meet. But then again, the specs that were announced by Elon Musk during the launch of it, as he said himself, were the minimum specs.
Yeah.
It can go a little over 200 miles on a full charge. It can go 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. Yeah. And as he said, those are the baseline specs. If you start getting things like ludicrous mode and stuff like that, it's all-wheel drive and it's fully superchargeable.
Yeah.
So it's and the American price is $35,000, which is half the price
of an S
of the baseline Model S. Yeah, the baseline Model S starts at 70,000. It starts with a 60 kilowatt-hour battery, which is smaller than the S. The smallest one in the S is 70 kilowatt hours. This is 60 kilowatt hours, but it's a smaller car, so
it is.
That shouldn't be a problem. And obviously, the S has a 70 and 85 and a 90 kilowatt hour battery, depending on which model you go for. I'm sure the same will happen with the Model 3. What they're saying, the launch date they're saying for the Model 3 is late 2017.
Yeah.
And Tesla have they have a history of not meeting deadlines.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't matter.
I suspect it'll be 2018 before we see any of them in Europe. So we're looking at least 2 years before any of them come off any kind of a lorry in Europe.
That fits my timeline perfectly, because the A6 will be, it'll be paid off by then, so I can get a Model 3 and not feel guilty, and not screw up my credit history or anything like that. There,
and
I can go for it.
My Prius will be 10 years old, so
yep.
It'll be almost time to get a new one. So
exactly. And given as we are hosts of issues like this, it would be reprehensible of us not to get something of which we talk about so often and have such a great affection for. I
think we should source a sponsor for the show, and they should sponsor us one each.
Yeah, no, that'll be good. I could go with that. I'm happy to sell my soul. The one thing, and in all seriousness, I've looked for the specs on, and I know that it's not a perfectly defined car yet. But one of the things that I want to know is how many ISOFIX seats you can get in it. I know in the S and the X you can get
3.
In the S, you can get 3 ISOFIX seats across the back. In the X, you can get 2. You can get 2 and 2.
Oh,
I think
wow.
you can get 5. Because you
Right.
can get one in the front, and then in the X, it's 2 side by side, and then 2 side by side
But
behind
isn't it
it.
illegal to put them in the front?
No, it's just not advised. You the front facing seats you can, the rear facing you can't. You can deactivate the airbag, but none of the major insurers or the car companies really say. None of them will say we guarantee the airbag won't deploy in an accident. So they're
Okay.
basically saying you can do it. It's just not a really good idea.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, but no, it's a beautiful looking car. It is, it's phenomenal.
Did you see any of the test drives that were taken? Mashable had a test drive video up.
I haven't. I've been saving that sort of for when I
It's
say
mad. There's no dashboard in it.
I've seen the pictures. Yes, everything's in the center console, which comes down, and it just
It's weird. And what they're saying is because there's no dashboard there, you can move the front passengers closer to the front wheels, basically, and that gives more room for the passengers in the back, more leg room. So it has more interior space for passengers than any car of its class, apparently.
Yep.
And he started off as well during the launch by saying it's safest car in its class, and that's one of the things they prioritize, obviously, and the Model S proves that, given that it broke the machine for testing.
Yes, the crush machine. It broke the crush machine. You think, oh, what did he want? That's just phenomenal.
What a great story.
I know. But the next one, I love the next one. I had to double check that this next story, because it really did. I was looking at it going, really? Can they do that?
I know, yeah. It's brilliant.
It is.
So, yeah, the Netherlands are mandating that any cars sold in the Netherlands after 2025 are can no longer be internal combustion engines. They have to be electric vehicles. I don't know if that includes hydrogen-based cars. But,
what about hybrids? Can they?
Hybrids, no.
Wow.
Yeah. No hybrids. It has to be electric, and I think fuel cells are allowed.
Yeah.
But no, it can't be hybrids, can't be petrol, can't be diesel.
Wow.
That's awesome, isn't it? That's amazing.
That really, really is.
That's hugely ambitious.
That is
hugely ambitious, and that really kickstarts the industry. If we had a few more countries do that, then the auto industry would really sit up and start to take notice.
Yeah, because look, at the end of the day, they know that they have a little bit of time on their side, or they're playing like they have a little bit of time on their side to eke out the economies of scale that they've built up.
Yeah.
Before they are forced into making that making that switch to away from internal combustion. So this will force something.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great to see. I mean, anytime you get legislation being pushed like that, it forces massive change. I mean, we saw it in the States when they started mandating the miles per gallon, the fuel economy laws.
Yes,
it completely changed the industry, and this is going to happen again.
These are the laws that Jimmy Carter brought in the 1970s.
Correct.
In response to the fuel crisis.
Yeah,
the oil crisis. Yes,
exactly. Changing topic again, and going back to Microsoft for a minute.
Yeah,
we saw them introducing teleportation technology.
Yes.
Kind of.
Well, holoportation, but the video is brilliant.
It is, yeah. It's mad. What it is if so, the guy on the left here in the white shirt is talking to this guy over here who is holoported in. He's in a remote place. And because the guy on the left is wearing a HoloLens glasses, he can talk to this other guy and record it, and it's scalable. So you can play it back afterwards. It's scalable. So as they say themselves in the video, you can shrink it down and stick it on a coffee table and rewatch it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It's completely mad. And I mean, we both travel a lot with our work.
Yep.
The ability to not have to travel so much, take away some of the stress of running for airports, crammed in seats for 10 hours in a plane. This would be so cool.
Oh no, it totally would be. It's yes, there's a hardware requirement for it and things like that, which makes it a little bit less transportable. But for people like you and I working in the office and things like that, they're being able to the hollow port into a meeting.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. It's such a cool idea, and the video is. I can highly recommend people go and see the video because it gives you a full feel for what this stuff is, and this is I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm a massive fan of what Microsoft Research do. Massive fan. When they put their mind to something, it comes off so well. We saw it with the concept of the Kinect. Which has had challenges from game developers and things like that there, but the hollow port is the next sort of iteration of that type of virtual presence and communication device. Phenomenal, absolutely brilliant. And knowing Microsoft, I would love to see how they open the platform. Does it have to be, is it Microsoft cameras or Microsoft software, but you can use different headsets with it or something like that there? How are we going to see Microsoft bring this to the world in a way that, Satya Nadella seems to favor? It's going to be an interesting one.
It is, yeah, it is. They seem to be getting more open. And I mean, I'm going to keep going because we've a ton more stories to do, and a lot of them are Microsoft stories because, as we said earlier, they had their Build conference this week. This one was cool. My kids are going to love it. Minecraft is getting more powerful on the mobile, so they're building into mobile the mods and the commands. What's the command thing's called?
I'm not a Minecraft person.
Command blocks. There it is. Yeah, command blocks and mods haven't been done before on tablets or mobile, just because they're too processor intensive. But they've figured out how to do it, and they're rolling it out now on those. And we'll keep going because, as I say, we've a good few of them to get through.
Yeah.
Microsoft have integrated Xamarin into Visual Studio free, and they're going to open source the Xamarin runtime. Had you seen that?
I hadn't actually. But it's one of those ones. It's Xamarin is the. Now let me see if I got this right. It's an iOS simulator, so that you can develop for iOS and not have to use Xcode, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Glad I got that right. Yeah. Okay.
So now they're making Xamarin Studio for OS X free as a community edition. And Visual Studio Enterprise subscribers will also get access to Xamarin's enterprise capabilities at no additional cost.
Yeah.
They're going to open source its SDK, including its runtime libraries and command line tools as part of the .NET Foundation in the coming months. Both Xamarin, SDK, and Mono will be available under the MIT license.
Yep.
And they've taken in what's the name of the guy? Miguel de Casa. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, and this is one of the things that I think everybody should do at least once. The Raspberry Pi organization did an article last month about the general open source licenses. So it did GPL, it did Apache, it did the MIT license, and what each of those licenses actually means. And I don't know if you saw it during the week. BMW had to send to somebody the entire code for the i3 car management system because it was under a GPL3 license. So now on GitHub is the entire code base of the i3.
Wow. Well, that's awesome.
Full props to BMW for doing it, because BT used a GPL license for the first 3 iterations of the Home Hub, and they actually refused to open source the license or open source the code, even though they used GPL3 code. They actually had to rewrite the entire Home Hub operating system because they didn't want to comply. They thought it was a security risk, and so they didn't do it.
Quite the opposite.
It is. It's quite the opposite, and full credit to BMW for doing it, because there's now people picking over their code that's going to help actually improve the code.
Yeah.
And out of interest in hacking and things like that, they're hacking in the traditional sense as opposed to cracking in the new sense. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Whenever you mention the MIT license, I think everybody should understand what an open source license is and what that actually means to people, especially when we're asking people to actually write more code. They can actually get themselves in the, if they're not using the open source license appropriately, either as a consumer or as a producer, then they can land themselves in some sticky situations. So they can. But anyway, sorry, go on.
No worries, no worries. Next story. I know you love this one.
Oh yes, this is one very close to my heart. Having spent, I've spent so much of my life. I'm a Microsoft aficionado. I do like Microsoft. There are many things wrong with the company and some of the software, but it's where my background is, and I'm never going to lose that. But in the last sort of 4 years, obviously with HANA, I've spent a lot of time in Linux and Bash and things like that there. And there are things that I love about Bash, and there are things I hate about Bash. But to see Microsoft bringing Bash to Windows means that the little administration scripts that I write for operating systems and things like that there, I don't have to write like a PowerShell version and a Bash version. I can just write one version now and put it up in GitHub and be perfectly happy. Yeah. It's bringing Windows into line with things like OS X, and it will. We constantly hear this thing about Ubuntu, the year of the Linux desktop. This is now going to push that back again.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So I'm really excited about this. I am one of the beta testers on their experience program and things like that there, and I'm waiting for the anniversary edition to be available for download so that I can play with this.
How long will it be before
summer?
No, different question. How long will it be before Microsoft releases its own Linux distro?
Well, the thing about it is Ubuntu is built into Windows. There is a sandbox Ubuntu machine in there. I don't think they will. It'll be part of the agreement with Ubuntu, so it will. I don't necessarily think that they will do it in the immediate term. I think they want to try this out and see. It'll cost them a lot less money in that regard, but I don't know. It's never been a question I've actually asked myself in without jest, if you know what I mean. But it's a very good point.
I recommended to Microsoft back at a talk a talk I gave them at an internal event in 2006. I recommended to them that they open source Windows. I knew it was never going to happen, but I guess never say never.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine them open sourcing? What is it? It's something horrific, like 11 million lines of code.
Yeah.
It is a phenomenal amount of code. If they open source that, it really would be that. You talk about earth-shattering events. That's got to rank up there.
Yeah,
definitely. Even if they open sourced previous versions, like Windows 3.1 or Windows 95, the ones that are way out of support.
Yeah,
I don't see the point in keeping those any longer.
No, of course not. No, it'd be interesting. Yeah. We'll keep going because we're well over time and we still have. For a change. Yeah.
4 more to go. Don't worry. Keep going.
This is an easy enough one. It's quick enough. Windows have extended its Hello Login security. It's Windows Hello Login security features to apps and the web. So that's nice. This is a way of logging in without having to use a password. You can use a password, or you can use your face or whatever. So
when you say using your face, you mean as a picture and not smashing it against the keyboard?
That's yeah. I should have clarified. You're right. You're right. So,
Rubbing your face against the keyboard.
and anything that gets rid of
Passwords.
password, it can only be a good thing, I think.
I've actually convinced my father today. Well, actually, Radio 2 convinced my father today to use two-factor authentication.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So when he comes back after taking Anna out, I'm going to put two-factor authentication onto his phone. Just texts. So when it comes to his Gmail and his Hotmail and things like that, there his passwords are pretty good. But it's just that two-factor authentication.
Yeah, that's good. I think for people of a certain generation, they'll find that difficult to deal with.
Well,
but
the text,
it's necessary.
The text, it's just the text thing. Even just so that he's aware of what happens. I'll log him into all his devices and check. Don't ask me again on this because that'll just confuse him. But it's just the knowledge that he will get a text when if somebody tries to breach his account, and then he can take action.
But you can't do the don't ask me again. It has to be don't ask me again within the next 30 days.
No, so on Google, so on Gmail, I have don't ask me again on, I think, only 2 devices, or 3 devices. So I'll not tell you what those are. One of them I carry with me. But yeah, in everything else, I have it. And the same for Hotmail. And but Slack and Dropbox and stuff like that, there I have the 2FA turned on. So
okay. Cool.
So
all right, we'll keep going.
Yep.
This is another quick story, and one I thought was quite nice. You can now add alt text to images on Twitter. So for people who are visually impaired.
Yes, I saw this.
Yeah, you can throw in some alt text, and as they go over it with their
I'm still on
browser, they get the alt text read out to them by their browser. So that's nice. It gives them more accessibility to whatever images are on screen.
Yeah.
Snapchat. I've only really tried Snapchat a couple of times. Find it hard to get into. But
I think it's a network thing.
Yeah.
Like Twitter and stuff like that, there where people complain, I just can't get into it. It's the strength of your network that draws you in.
It's also
and it's a generational thing.
It's more than that. That's a big part of it. You're right, but it's also more than that. You don't get the same kind of feedback on Snapchat that you do get on other platforms. The immediacy of the replies and that kind of thing doesn't happen. Although now with the new features they're after building into Snapchat, that'll be less frequently the case. There's a video on this somewhere there. This video, it's worth watching. Josh has done this video about it, and he goes through it in some detail and explains it quite well. And this is a good article. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Snapchat is not going away.
No,
that's the thing to take home, and it's probably going to be the next Twitter or similar. It's definitely going to be the platform that everyone else is going to try and emulate in terms of chat. So it's you can't afford to ignore it, I guess, is what I'm saying, and maybe try and start getting into it.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. I always sort of put it in the same sort of bucket as WhatsApp. It's point to point. It's you and me communicating as opposed to you and me in a cocktail party. Which is what Twitter effectively is. So I'm going to have to take another look at it, because the other thing is that Snapchat I also associate with dodgy pictures that destroy, delete themselves and things like that.
Right.
There, so
I'm
far too old for that type of stuff.
That part of it is history. I think they're trying to make people forget that ever happened.
What's it? Rehabilitate their image. That's what it is.
That's
You know,
it.
Donald Trump could do with some of that. No, actually, Donald Trump definitely shouldn't do anything like that, because, you know, if he rehabilitates his image, he may actually, you know, scarily enough, get in through the door of what is it, 1600?
Pennsylvania Avenue.
Pennsylvania Avenue. Yes. Yeah.
We won't talk about that.
No.
Last story.
Yes.
A new technology for Wi-Fi, which allows for centimeter level placement of devices within.
Jeez.
Yeah. Very. What's the word I'm looking for? Granular placement of people or devices, and a couple of the use cases they're talking about for this are for the likes of small business owners who have Wi-Fi for their customers, to stop the Wi-Fi being leaked or used by people outside the walls of the business, basically.
Yep.
So it'll determine whether people are on one side of the wall or the other and feed them Wi-Fi based on that.
Yeah.
So that's one nice use case of it. It also, they talk about an interesting one where they say, look, if people are in a room or not, you could hook this up to their energy systems and say, okay, nobody in this room, let's turn the lights off, let's turn the aircon on or off or whatever it is, based on, you know, occupancy of the room. I can see a lot of hotels who have to roll out Wi-Fi anyway being very interested in the likes of this, because you know, it can decide to drop power to the router in an area or in a room, depending on occupancy of the room, and drop all the other stuff in the room if there's nobody in the room as well.
Well, it you know, as you say, you know, as an IoT scenario, you know, we use infrared sensors, or we can use noise detectors or things like that there to determine whether somebody's actually in a location. The use of Wi-Fi for that means, and because, you know, let's face it, Wi-Fi is a first world problem in many respects.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous.
It is ubiquitous. So by doing this, it means that we don't have to deploy additional sensors.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And but having said that, things like infrared sensors and stuff like that, they're very useful for temperature detection and fire prevention and things like that. So, but it's another one of those things that adds another string to the bow. It adds an additional information stream from which inferences can be made, systems can be made smarter and actually, you know, more robust. In that regard, you know, as I said in Facebook, this is one of those things that, sorry, it's very noisy behind me. Family's back. We're doing something similar, hopefully, when we go to Sapphire around IoT and a 360-degree view of the customer. So using IoT to bring a better 360-degree view of the customer and their experience. We have a very strange scenario, which will be quite it's good fun.
Awesome.
So it's good fun.
Looking forward to seeing that. Hope I get to see it in person.
Absolutely. Well, be remiss of you not to be there. Somebody to let you be there.
All right, that's our stories.
I think so.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for your time and your interest, and we will be back next week with another show with more stories, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.
Cheers. Thanks.